everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm the GCSE science teacher, and in today's video we're going to be starting a brand new topic called infection and response. This is for GCSE biology students, and we're going to start off by talking about communicable diseases. So first of all, what actually is a communicable disease? Well, it's a disease that has been caused by a pathogen or a microorganism that causes diseases, and they can be transmitted from one organism to another. So they can be spread around to other living things, whether it's plants, whether it's animals, including humans, that is as well. So let's have a look at some of the pathogens that cause disease. So here are the 4 pathogens you need to know about at GCSE. You've got the virus, the bacteria, the fungi or fungus, if we're talking about just one of them, and we have protists as well. Each of these have multiple diseases that can be caused from them. However, remember that not all viruses are the same, not all bacteria are the same, and so on and so forth. You have different versions of those that cause different versions of disease, and we're going to talk about examples in a moment. Something to be aware of when we talk about microorganisms, we're talking about microscopic cells. These are cells in front of you, you can see, that are very, very small. We can't see them with the naked eye. The only exception would be a fungus. In some cases, you can actually see funguses in the form of molds. If you've ever seen moldy bread, if you've ever seen a fungus growing on, say, a plant, that is one that you can actually see. But bacteria and viruses and protists, often you don't really see them because they're so small. A distinction as well between these different bacteria and viruses and things like that. The difference you want to be aware of is bacteria, fungus, and protists. These are considered as living. Specifically, bacteria at GCSE, they like you to know that this is a living cell. However, a virus is considered at GCSE non-living. And the reason for that is because it requires a host cell to replicate. And what does that mean? Well, it needs to be injected into a cell, such as a human cell, to actually replicate and copy its DNA over and over and make viral proteins to go on and infect other cells as well. So that's the biggest distinction here. Something else to be aware of as well, a bacteria divides by binary fission. At GCSE, they like you to know that. Remember, we've talked about mitosis and meiosis as different types of cell division. However, bacteria divide by binary fission. And lastly, remember that pathogens are all to do with causing disease. However, there are microorganisms that don't cause disease. So you may have heard of friendly bacteria in, say, yogurt, or friendly bacteria in our digestive system. This is true. This is just kind of a layman's way of saying that there are bacteria that can actually help us to stay healthy. And this is correct because a lot of the bacteria in our digestive system actually kind of outcompetes harmful bacteria. It can help with digestion. Also, there's bacteria in the surface of our skin. We have something called the microflora. This can actually essentially outcompete other bacteria that we can come into contact with. So we do need some bacteria to survive. We're all kind of in this symbiotic relationship around the world. Okay, we're all kind of every living thing has a place, but obviously pathogens, their place is to cause a disease, which is obviously harmful to us. So at GCSE, you need to know about the different transmission routes of diseases. And so far here on my channel, we've talked about cancer, we've talked about coronary heart disease. I'll link them in the cards above for you. These diseases are often considered as non-communicable. For the most part, cancer has a few exceptions. However, in the case of today's video, we're going to talk about communicable diseases and how they are spread from one organism to another. So the following transmission routes you need to be aware of are as follows. We have coughing and sneezing, often known as droplet infection. We have direct contact, so physical contact with someone who has a disease, whether that's a sexual contact and sharing bodily fluids, or whether that's just simply touching someone's infected area and actually not washing your hands afterwards. That was very much the case back in the medieval time when people didn't wash their hands or didn't know to wash their hands. Also, we have vectors, which are organisms that actually transmit the disease, like fleas or mice or rats. This was very common in the case of the plague in the Victorian era. We also have waterborne diseases such as cholera, which contain contaminated water supplies and actually can help the disease to spread and actually infect more people, especially if the source of water is a communal source. And also food, ill-prepared food. This is why in a lot of if not all the restaurants and takeaway shops and everything like this, there is food standards, and you have to have a hygiene rating in a lot of these establishments. So there's lots of different ways that diseases can be spread. These are just some of the key ones that you should be aware of. Okay, so we'll start off with bacterial diseases, and I'm going to talk about just a handful of different diseases for each different pathogen. However, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of diseases I could have discussed today. The exam board that you are using for your GCSE exam, I will link down in the description box below the key diseases you need to be aware of and some information about each, just so you have that for your own revision. But let's focus on the first one, which is gonorrhea. This is a sexually transmitted disease. It can be spread from one person who is infected to any other person they are in contact with. The exchange of bodily fluids will actually cause the person with the disease to experience yellow or green discharge from the genitals. It can also cause pain whilst urinating. It can also be itchy. There's lots of horrible sort of symptoms that can occur. However, we know that there are other STDs, other sexually transmitted diseases that actually don't have symptoms like chlamydia, which is why a lot of the time people don't realize they even are infected. And this is why using barrier methods like condoms are so important, and regular testing if someone is changing their sexual partner often is occurring. That's something that can help prevent the disease from spreading. However, if someone does get the disease, they would need to use antibiotics and go to the doctor to get that. And this will destroy and kill the bacteria that is causing gonorrhea. Another example of a bacterial disease is salmonella. This is slightly different. It can be passed on through eating uncooked or raw meat or food that has been prepared in an unsanitary way. So let's say someone has chopped up some uncooked meat, some raw chicken, and then they've not wiped the surface down with bleach or disinfected it, and then they start to prepare something else, or they've not washed their hands, that kind of thing. This can lead to people experiencing vomiting, nausea, diarrhea. It can be very dangerous, salmonella, especially for young people, especially for older people, because the immune system is already either developing or weakened. So one of the ways to prevent this is to cook meat thoroughly, to wash your hands, and also if there is a suspected salmonella outbreak in, say, a restaurant, a food inspector will go in and check what's going on in that kitchen. Um, Again, treatments would be very straightforward. It would be antibiotics. However, there is now resistance to antibiotics. Some of the bacteria are getting smarter. There's some intelligence there that actually causes them to fight back against the antibiotics. I am going to do a whole video on antibiotic resistance. So comment down below or give this video a like if you would like that in the next few weeks. So that's bacterial diseases in a nutshell. Okay, so we have viral diseases now. The first one we're going to talk about is tobacco mosaic virus, or TMV. Essentially, what TMV looks like in a tobacco plant are yellowed leaves. These leaves are yellow because of a process called chlorosis. And this means that the virus that causes TMV actually breaks down chlorophyll and stops chlorophyll production. And therefore, what happens is the plant doesn't grow as much as it could have done because there's less chlorophyll, less photosynthesis occurring because less light energy is absorbed, and therefore you have stunted growth. The plant is actually a lot smaller. And this occurs through direct contact. If we have a plant that's infected, it can be essentially pass on the virus to another plant through unsanitary work tools. If you are cutting a plant that has the disease and then you use the same secateurs or the same scissors on another plant, you can pass on the disease like this. This is where a lot of the time those types of plants that are infected would need to be isolated and burnt so they are destroyed. Influenza is another example of a viral disease. Often we call this just the flu. There are loads of different strains of the flu. Each year, a lot of people will get the flu vaccination to prevent that flu from occurring or that influenza from occurring. And the way they determine which vaccine to give someone every year for the flu is to look at the data, and there's something called epidemiology, which is a load of data that scientists use to determine what happens or what will happen next, what's happened previously, and actually kind of predict which strain of the flu or which version of the flu will actually be prevalent or in high amounts that year. So that's why people will get the flu vaccination every year. But if someone does unfortunately get the flu, they will have muscle aches, headaches, a fever. They will also need to just rest. Often people think a vaccine is used to treat the disease. It's not, it's a prevention. So if someone does get a viral disease, specifically the flu or measles, they will need to rest, take painkillers like paracetamol, that kind of thing to make them feel a bit better. whilst the symptoms are ongoing. Measles is another example of a type of droplet infection, disease spread through droplet infection, coughing and sneezing. Often this happens to children. It can cause a very itchy red rash. It can cause a fever, not very nice at all. What that child would often have would be the MMR vaccination, which is the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccination. It's a triple vaccine that's given to children to prevent 3 different diseases, including the measles. But unfortunately, some people still do get the measles. Some people don't have the vaccine. Obviously, it's personal choice. But that is one of the symptoms that can occur. Okay, so protist diseases. Well, this is a interesting one because a protist disease is often one that causes malaria. Now, malaria we know of as a disease that often affects people who are living in hotter climates like sub-Saharan Africa. However, with the rise of climate change, we're actually starting to see more mosquitoes which are transferring across the globe, and we actually are starting to see a bit of an increase in malaria across the globe as well. So, how is malaria spread? Well, it's spread through insect bites, specifically the anopheles, which is a scientific word for mosquitoes. These are act as vectors, which are living things, small insects that can actually transmit or pass on a disease. Remember the fleas in the case of the plague, they were carrying the plague bacteria, they were traveling on rats, and they were being passed across to other people and biting them. So, malaria can leave someone feeling incredibly feverish, feeling nauseous. It can obviously be fatal in some cases. And often this is because of the high amounts of stress that is put on the body as well, because this disease is quite. It's quite awful, really. If someone does get this disease, they will need medical treatment urgently. Prevention, we would say mosquito nets, insect repellent to prevent those bites from happening in the first place. Also, destroying the habitat of the mosquito, which sounds quite ironic because in biology, we always are told, to maintain habitats and biodiversity. But in the case of mosquitoes, because they cause such devastating diseases, we want to destroy those habitats. And we do this by clearing any water that is stagnant. So any water that is just in a pool of water, there's no drainage system, there's no flow of water, it's just stagnant water like a swamp. But the mosquito love to live in those environments. And then as well, treatment. So if someone does get the malaria disease, we would give them a medication. So anti-malarial medication. This can help them feel a lot better and remove some of those symptoms that are occurring. And then lastly, we have fungal diseases. So this again can occur in plants. So for the case of plants, we have something called rose black spot, which affects rose plants. The leaves on the rose plant actually have black spots on them. Again, this affects photosynthesis because there's less chlorophyll, less light energy that can be absorbed. So we do see stunted growth as well. We also have a prevention for this. So any of the plants that are infected, we would remove them, destroy them by burning them. But because it's a fungus, they can be spread through the wind. A lot of the fungal spores are very lightweight and can be spread as the wind blows to one plant to another. So it's really important that those plants are destroyed quickly. Also to clean gardening tools, just as well in the case of TMV. If you are using gardening tools, people who are doing that would need to clean those tools in between from one plant to another to prevent infection spreading. Another example of a fungal disease is athlete's foot. So the essentially it's called athlete's foot because people who do a lot of athletics, a lot of sports, they can get very sweaty, and it can lead to an increase in a fungal growth. There are, like I say, fungal growths on our body normally, naturally, and this is important. But increased moisture on the skin can actually lead to increased fungal spores, and this can be quite itchy, especially in the feet, if that is the case. So one of the ways that this is prevented is by increasing the hygiene, using clean socks every time when someone trains, also changing shoes if possible, so you're not wearing the same shoes every day. Also, if someone is getting this regularly, they may even have an antifungal cream to kind of help with the treatment and reduce some of the itchiness as well. Thank you so much for watching. I've been the GCSE science teacher and you have been curious. If you did enjoy the video, please give it a like and share this with someone else you think would benefit from learning more. I have lots of videos on this side of the screen if you are interested, a playlist and another video which could be helpful to yourself. So give them a watch if you are wanting more revision from myself. And also on this side, you can check out my social medias, Instagram and TikTok, if you would like some more revision support for GCSE, biology, chemistry and physics. Thank you so much if you've already subscribed. I cannot believe how quickly my channel is growing here on YouTube. I'm so grateful for all of your support. Have a fantastic day and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.